Well, greetings and welcome to episode 7 of Spiritual Practices for Tough Times. I'm really happy that you are joining us today as we continue our exploration of spiritual practices to help us with everything that's happening. Um, we're in day 21 now of our physical distancing, and it's so hard to believe how us as we join together today. It's been 3 weeks. So, how are you doing? How are you feeling? I know there are so many different things that are going on right now, and every day, as our Globe and Mail, our headline says today, there is so much happening. The news is different each and every day, and sometimes by the hour. As we look at the headlines today, the outbreak is overwhelming nursing homes, and we're realizing as we continue this journey how important physical and social distancing are, and that after 3 weeks, now is really the time we need to hunker down and stay home and not go out as little as possible and only for the bare essentials, if anything. It reminds me as we continue our journey that it's so important to be together, to think of each other, to hold each other in our thoughts and prayers. And so as we light this candle today, it reminds me of the sacred light that is within you, within each of us, and in these tough times. But also as you light this candle, we light it in prayer and in remembrance of all those who are on the front line right now, who are putting themselves in danger to care for others who are contracting COVID-19. And besides that, all those who are still dealing with the everyday normal life that's happening out there in terms of people that are struggling just with what we used to call normal everyday life situations. I hope you have a cup of tea or some coffee as we join together, or maybe something a little stronger if you're watching this in the evening. It always reminds me that in our common humanity, even though we're reaching across the screen and through the camera to each other, we are still in deep communion, that there's a presence that holds you and me as we gather each day for these spiritual practices for tough times. I'd like to begin our time together with a moment of centering. Centering so important, especially when there's so much happening and all of us are dealing with stress and anxiety and grief and change to our normal routines and potentially economic stress, emotional stress, physical stress. It gives us a moment just to come into the present moment where we find that there is a presence that expands in and through all that's happening and helps us deal with it. So I invite you as we begin this time just to maybe put your feet on the floor, to sit tall in your chair or your couch. And I invite you to close your eyes as I begin this practice. It's going to be a practice that I'll guide us through in the beginning, and then we'll have some moments of breath. So let us begin it with the ringing of our meditation bell. Yes, so just close your eyes. Begin to feel your body. Begin to feel your feet on the floor and connecting with the earth. Allow your awareness to go deeper in your body and begin to feel your hands gently resting on your lap. You may even feel the top of your head. You may even feel that as you sit in your chair comfortably with your eyes closed, that you start to feel your whole body. And if you feel some stress in your shoulders or your back, just gently bring your awareness, and as you breathe out that stress. Let it go just for a moment. Maybe your chest feels tight, or your solar plexus. Just breathe into it. And in your out-breath, imagine that whatever heaviness or darkness that you're carrying there is flowing out And Mother Earth and Source are just taking care of it in this moment. Then I invite you to take a conscious, deep inhalation, filling your lungs down into your belly. And then exhaling. And then I invite you to continue following your breath, whether that's a gentle inhalation and an exhalation, or possibly you're doing 4 square breathing. Just follow your breath. And if you start to feel anxious or stressed or worrying about the future, just come back to your breath and gently let go of those thoughts. Breathing in and breathing out. Letting go and allowing yourself to come more into this moment, more into your body, here and now. I invite you to take one final breath. One deep inhalation and one exhalation. And as we end this time and as you slowly open your eyes, do you see or feel beauty or joy around you? Or is there something you feel gratitude that you weren't aware of before we started this? How do you feel in your body now? Is your mind a bit quieter? Do you feel a sense of underlying calm now? You know, it's amazing for me, every time I do this with you, I do start to sense a little bit of that. To be honest, before we start, I'm still sometimes nervous about being in front of the camera with you and, all the stuff that's happening. And just that few moments of conscious breathing, which is a spiritual practice. It's amazing how I find clarity and peace just for a moment. So today I'd like to talk about how do we find perspective. Perspective helps our attitudinal responses. So how do we see? How do we sense the world? How do we interpret that? Perspective. So spiritual practices are one way that helps us with perspective. And it reminds me of this corner gas episode in which they were talking about seeing and how do you see and fears around that.
Hank?
Well, it's my fault, really. I made friends with him in grade 2.
Well, look at the bright side.
Is the bright side 3 inches from my face? Otherwise, I can't look at it.
No, I mean, it's a good opportunity for you to get new frames.
Yeah, I have an even better solution.
Nice work, Melvin. Good luck at the science fair.
Come on, it's hardly even noticeable. Noticeable, huh?
I'm sorry. Did you get kicked by a donkey or something?
What if I did? You'd feel bad now.
At least let me put some clear tape on those.
Hey, Two Eyes.
It's not nice to tease, whoever you are.
Actually, it's a good look. Brings out the face on your head.
Thanks, I think.
You ever thought about laser eye surgery?
Oh, sure, I've thought about it. Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Leroy. I expect you to die. Eventually. But for now, let's just do this laser eye surgery.
Laser surgery. Brent? Oh, please. He gets squeamish cutting his nails.
I have sensitive cuticles. Sensitive, manly cuticles.
Plus, you're a chicken.
Don't make fun of Brent. It's not his fault. He's just a...
Chicken?
So, with meditation practices or contemplation or spiritual practices, no matter what they are, sitting and breathing, doing a mantra, yoga, walking meditation, like we talked about in episode 6, they're a way that help us find perspective consciously in a moment. So then we can change how we view the events happening around us. They're not to take them away or to make them any less or to take away the deep feelings we have, but it's to help us touch base with the way the reality is, and that way work with it and not get stuck or trapped. It reminds me of this Headspace video, which talks about what to do when we find a hole in our life.
Imagine you're walking down a street. It's a street you know well, maybe one you walk down every single day. But you're so caught up in your own thinking, wondering what you're going to have for lunch, thinking back to a conversation you had earlier, that you end up falling down a hole. Now, at the bottom of this hole, you find yourself thinking, how did I end up here? Worse yet, the next day, you do the exact same thing. And then again, the next day. It may not sound like an especially cheerful idea, but as an analogy for the mind, it's really helpful. Because so often, we follow the same habits of mind over and over again. And so we find ourselves in an emotional hole, maybe even a place that's really painful. But imagine if you started just noticing, being more aware of your surroundings. Sure, maybe next time you'd realize a little too late and you'd still end up in the hole again. But maybe the time after that, you'd notice the hole and choose to walk around it instead. This is what it means to train the mind. This is what it means to have headspace.
So the beauty of spiritual practices is they're not a means to block out reality or block out habitual experiences or even emotional pain or stress. It's a way to work with it so we don't keep falling in a hole over and over, which then we don't experience life or able to work with the whole of our life in a way that's productive. And so a spiritual practice is about getting more headspace. And added to that, then it's about getting more heart space so that we have more awareness and more capacity to work with what's ever going on in our body and in our life, and then to work in the everyday moment of what's going on in our lives. And I think that's one of the gifts, if we can say it that way, that with COVID-19 and all the changes, is how do we work with this stress? And then work with our normal lives and what's happening normally added on top of that in a way that we can bring more head space and more heart space and then more emotional space with all that's happening in our lives. So if we can practice keeping still within, which is a meditation practice, or breathing, or yoga, or walking, like that moment of letting go, or holding a more whole perspective, then we can see the emerging flow and beauty that's all around us, even in the midst of whatever darkness is happening. It's how to hold both of those simultaneously, which is the whole of reality, and then work from there. And that's what spiritual practices are giving us. Just like we did, that moment of breathing for a few moments at the beginning of this episode, it helps us to hold reality, both the light and the dark simultaneously, and to work out of that moment with non-judgmental attitudes, with compassion for ourselves and other, and to work in ways that are nonviolent. It reminds me of a journey of Parker Palmer, who's an American writer. He's written many books, and he's helping us find our true self and our life. And he had this experience when he was younger, when he was in a program called Outbound. And it's a program that helps train people in adventure outside. And he explains it this way in this video clip from The Work of the People.
What do you mean by being forced underground? That we need to go down and in and through?
Well, my famous story about that one, to me, in the context of my life, is a story I tell in Let Your Life Speak about being on Outward Bound at age 40 something, and being on Hurricane Island off the coast of Maine and facing this challenge that I had most feared on the Outward Bound program, which was rappelling down a 100-foot cliff. I'm not an athlete. I don't deal easily with heights. And suddenly I'm being forced to make what seemed to me like a death-defying descent down a very rugged rock wall. Well, without going into all the details, I will say that there came a moment in this descent at about the midpoint where I simply froze in fear. I could no longer move my hands, and I was suspended there. And I had no idea what to do. It was clear nobody was going to haul me up, nobody was going to lower me down. The whole thing was up to me, and I just hung there for what seemed like an eternity until finally this young woman who was one of our instructors down below, there was another one up top, said, "Is anything wrong, Parker?" I mean, looking back, I know that there must have been a little humor in that. But I said in this childlike voice that came from God knows where inside of me, "I don't want to talk about it." She said, "Well, then it's time for you to learn the Outward Bound motto." And she said, "The Outward Bound motto is, if you can't get out of it, get into it." And for reasons I can't explain, those words just bypassed my argumentative mind and went right into my body and my heart. I mean, the truth of them was undeniable. And I started moving. And I made it down without further difficulty. I got into it. And I remember I was at Pendle Hill, the Quaker community at the time, and I came back to this life together with 80 people, and I just thought, you know, on Outward Bound, we could all see what people were struggling with. The struggles were external and visible, and those 10 people were so supportive of each other. If only we could see what it is that other people, what it is that people in this community are struggling with. If only that were more visible to us. If only we could hear people saying, "I don't want to talk about it." If only we could help them understand that if you can't get out of it, you need to get into it. What a stronger and deeper community this would be. So when I've come across my own equivalents of being suspended in the middle of that rappel, things like trying to take on a book on democracy at age 65 when I'm in the middle of a clinical depression and I've lost faith in myself as a writer, and I'm experiencing some of the symptoms of aging, the inability to multitask as much as I used to do, the inability to remember what I read yesterday as clearly as I used to do, just the lack of energy to do all the things that I'm asked to do. I'm wondering can I write another book, I know that the only way to get out of it is to get into it. The only way to deal with the darkness is not to try to walk around it or turn your back on it or pretend it isn't there, but to go deeper into it until you start to see a little bit of light and a little bit more light. It took me 7 years to write the book. Finding the light didn't happen quickly or easily. But I'm awfully glad for that outward bound experience, which gave me guidance in that moment.
Maybe you don't want to talk about it. Maybe that's happening for you right now in some aspects of your life. I know in my life too. Maybe we don't want to talk about it. Loneliness, grief, anger, fear, anxiety, panic, all these things. The beautiful thing that Parker Palmer says, if you can't get out of it, get into it. And this is the real safe thing about spiritual practices, that they are one of the safest ways to get into it without having to be afraid of anything changing. Because all you do is you walk, or you breathe, or you let go of your thoughts with a sacred word, or you do body poses. And it doesn't matter how you look when you do them. There's so many of these different spiritual practices, is that when you do them, they're a safe, non-judgmental, compassionate, non-violent moment to get into whatever's happening, so that we don't have to repress or depress or suppress what we feel is this darkness that is around us right now with our pandemic and economic times. But instead of going through them, we begin to feel an emerging flow in spirit. It reminds me of this comic by Susan Collins, who's allowed it to be published free. And in this comic, there's a person sitting there in their meditation practice, as you notice, and then they have all these thoughts, all this darkness, all this, I don't want to talk about it, coming up, because it will come up. You know, the worst case scenarios, worry about family, sounds of rain and sirens, friends I should call, anxiety about money, people I miss seeing regularly is another thought that comes up for her. Pandemic to-do list, personal regrets, that guy or woman or person I had a crush on. I wish I had a dog. Breathing is pretty cool. Glad my lungs still work. And then the final thought that pops up is, I'm good on TP. So spiritual practices are this moment that allow us to really integrate and allow our perspective to change, so that no matter what is happening, that we can still in those moments touch beauty and joy and see an emerging flow of life, even in our loneliness, in our grief, in our trauma, in our anxiety, in our panic, in our anger, in our boredom, in our restlessness, our foreboding. I could just keep going on, can't you tell? And you'll be saying, I don't want to talk about it. Please stop. I'm going to shut off this right now because it's too much for me. But you know, in this next video by Green Renaissance, Joshua Miles, who does block work, talks about touching beauty, which I think we have to remember. And this is what spiritual practices help us do.
The first night my wife and I had a meal together, before we were married, we decided both our dreams were to make our own life on our own piece of land, to try and live as self-sufficient as possible, and be free, I suppose. To create our own world, not stand on a tomato box shouting at the world what they must do, but just live it. I'm one of those lucky people that can spend my day creating something and people pay me for it. It's wonderful. I do appreciate it still every day. Every day I think how happy I am and lucky I am. Living sustainably, it's pure. And I think my inspiration as an artist comes from the beauty in life. I've always noticed and believed that those small things, the little flowers that you didn't notice yesterday, that's the happiness. You just need to train yourself to recognize it. And we can choose the things we put in our heart. Choosing every second, choosing the reaction to someone's words, the direction to look at. It's all those milliseconds together in your life that steers you. People say, yeah, but I can't make a difference. But you can. If everyone does it, then obviously it's going to make a huge difference. There's a lot of sadness and hate and anger, and there should be much more beauty in the world.
It's the small things that matter. It's that we can all make a difference. It's so easy to allow this current situation just to overwhelm us and to close down and to think there is no light and only darkness and maybe other things that happen in your life beyond this, and it's just so easy. And like Joshua said, if we could all be trained to see, I think what this Christ is asking us, that it's the small things that really matter the most. And us noticing that in each other and being that way will make the biggest difference now. And that's what spiritual practices are offering us. I don't know what you think. It's a different way maybe. Maybe you never thought of it. But now we have the time sometimes to take a moment to breathe consciously, to do 20 minutes of meditation, to do 5 minutes of mindful walking in the morning, to do yoga, or any other practice that helps open our heart and our head space to the whole of reality, even in the midst of all that's there. So to end our time together, I'd like to invite us into a moment again of letting go, of allowing our perspective to broaden, to be here now, and to notice a moment of gratitude and beauty and joy. So we're going to do our wind mindfulness exercise that we've been doing for a few episodes. So I'll ring the meditation bell in a moment, and then I'll lead us through a guided meditation to help us to continue to open our perspective and help us change how we react moment by moment, what's happening inside of us, what's happening around us and beyond us, in which we have no control. So let us begin. So I invite you to close your eyes, to again gently be present at your body. And then imagine that you're sitting on one of your favorite beaches, or somewhere that brings you joy, maybe in a meadow. And then find yourself feeling underneath the beach, Mother Earth supporting you. Then I invite you to imagine and to feel the warm sunlight gently falling on you, warming your face and your hands and your body. You know that feeling when you feel that sunlight, it just brings a sense of peace and joy and safety. And then I invite you to begin to hear your surroundings, to imagine the birds, the gentle waves or the running of a creek or the laps of a lake. And then I invite you to feel the soft breeze blowing through your hair, tickling your face, going past you. Just breathe into this moment. Take a deep inhalation. And then gently and slowly exhale. And as we sit here together on the beach with the warm sunlight, the gentle breeze, and the sounds of nature, if thoughts come up, no matter what they are, however we judge them, good or bad, we like them, we don't like them, I shouldn't be having it, I should be thinking this way, worries or feelings, just imagine that they leave your body and you just gently place them on the breeze, and the breeze takes care of them and they go off and away, and you don't have to worry about them for this second. Just let your thoughts and emotions gently go with the gentle breeze as the sun shines upon you, as the waves invite you to let go and be. Breathe. Let go. Trust your body. Trust that your heart can be present in any situation, any feeling. Maybe as we do this, you'll begin to feel a presence. You might feel a spaciousness growing inside of you, a sense of calm. Maybe you'll begin to feel that there's a vibrancy, there's a vibration within you, an aliveness, and you'll begin to feel awake. You may not know what you're waking up to or how to describe it, but there's a generosity to you right now and right here, an increasing tenderness, a sweetness, maybe even an intimacy as you breathe in, as you breathe out, and as you let go and let whatever's happening float away with the breeze. And after a few more breaths, I'm going to ring the meditation bell. Just allow yourself to hear the vibrancy of the bell. And as we gently open our eyes, I invite you just to be with this moment. I hope it's more spacious for you. I hope you do feel sweetness. I hope no matter what's happening for you and what may happen in the days ahead, I hope you know that it's okay. I hope that you can come back to maybe breathing or other spiritual practices until we meet again, and come back into this tenderness, into this being that spiritual practices offer us. And may you be blessed, and may you be safe, and may you gently touch your reality until we meet again. And to know that there's a presence that's with you, that's within you, that's around you, and that holds all of our reality. And all of us together seeing the small things that really matter and being open to a larger heart space and head space and caring for each other, that we'll all get through this. So take care. And once again, thank you for being with us on this episode of Spiritual Practices for Tough Times.